Today I'm going to show you how you can make a very simple environment and cool visual effects and realistic looking in Blender as a beginner. Let's go. So let's fire our Blender. This is my Blender default setup. This is what it looks like in the very beginning. I usually start with a 3D scan of a person and a camera, no lights. That's all I have. And I also render automatically in cycles, but let's switch for this one to Eevee so the render is going to be faster. Now, to make realistic environments, there's a few things you can do to make your life very easy. For example, using HDRIs for the lighting information and for the background. The first tip for you is download Polyhaven, because Polyhaven, the plugin Polyhaven, has lots of HDRI images and also lots of models which you can use, which is awesome because we are lazy here. We don't want to do any work and still get good results. So get Polyhaven. Here on my left you can see what it looks like. Those are HDRIs. If you're confused with what that is, when I drag and drop this in here, you can see very easily that I have like a spherical image around my subject. So my subject is going to be lit by this, and also if I want to, and in this case I do want to, I want to keep this as a background. So now we just have to figure out what kind of environment we want to do, and I want to do something in the nature. So I'm just going to scrub through here until I find something which I like. This is what I'm going to start with, and either you do it now or later on. If you use the HDRIs from Polyhaven, you can even increase the resolution. Right now you can see it doesn't look that great, but if I increase this to, let's say, 4K, it downloads the 4K version of this background, and voila, it looks like way better. Now I'm just going to align my camera with holding the middle mouse button. I can just turn it until I kind of like the background, and I think I'm just going to go with this. When it comes to photorealism and 3D models, like lighting your environment from the back, it's always a good idea. You can see my sunset is here in the background, and it would look better if I have the subject backlit. It's just like also like a cinematography tip. If it's backlit, it looks more cinematic. Just like I am backlit here, you can see my rim light here. It makes it look more cinematic, which is what we want. Okay, now we actually have to be a little more creative. So the first thing I decide is I want to render this in a vertical resolution. So I'm just going to go here to my output settings. Right now it's horizontal, so I'm just going to swap those two numbers. So this is going to be 1080 and this is going to be 1920. So now it's a vertical resolution, so it looks like it's shot from an iPhone. Okay, right now you can see he's basically just standing on this water here, and I do want water, I think, but I don't want anything standing on it, so maybe I'm gonna have like a little spaceship or something flying over the water. But first we need to create the water. For that I'm gonna hold Shift A, make a new mesh, a plane. Now I'm gonna increase the size of the plane until it reaches the back here, the rim. Now this doesn't look like water at all, so let's give it some water material. So let's click on New. This is my shader editor, by the way. This is how you can open it, or you can also go under shading, then you open a whole tab for it, but that's good enough for me. So now I'm going to make a water shader, which is very simple. Just delete the principal BSDF, which it comes with, and let's make hold Shift A, make a glass shader. Because glass and water, it's basically the same. The only difference is the IOR of water is 1.333. So now that basically already looks like water. You can see when I play with this IOR, the reflection just changes. So just remember, for water it's 1.33. Like blood, for example, has a different IOR, coffee has a different one. So every liquid has a different one. So water is 1.33. Just remember that. Now that looks great, but right now this water looks a little too perfect, so I could increase the roughness. But what I like to do instead is I'm gonna hit tab for edit mode, right click, and subdivide this. I'm gonna subdivide this many times. Let's say 50 times. Let's say 100 times. The more the better. now I have all those different subdivisions here. So see, if I wanted to model this, I could, but I don't want to model this. What I actually want to do is using the displacement here, creating a displacement node, but also I'm gonna hold Shift A and make a noise texture. And what a noise texture basically does is, when I zoom out here, it just creates a noise pattern. I can increase or decrease the size of this noise pattern, and basically the idea is that I'm gonna use this pattern to adjust the height of my displacement. So now I just adjust the scale information to make the ripples basically smaller, until I feel like, okay, it kind of looks like water. From here it looks like water, but we're just further away. If I zoom in, it doesn't really look like water, so I'm just gonna give it more detail, increase the roughness a little. And here, basically with this scale, I can make it bigger or smaller. So if I just want a little few ripples, yeah, that looks pretty good. So then next problem is, if I play this, nothing is happening because the water is not real water. It's basically just a noise pattern. If I want to move this noise pattern, animate it, I'm going to click on 3D and make it 4D instead. So now when I go in the very first frame, hover over the W value, hit I. Now I just created a keyframe in the very beginning. I'm going to go on the very last frame, change this number to, let's say, 0.1, and hover over W again, hit I. Now I created another keyframe, and you can see I have one keyframe and another one, and everything in between is basically animated. Now I can see here if I like the speed or not, but right now the problem is, you see this curve here, it basically curves in and curves out. I don't want it to curve in and out. I want it to be linear, and for that I just hit A. It selects both of my keyframes, hit T on my keyboard, and instead of Bezier, I want it to be linear. And now you can see this graph is straight. So now when I play it, I see the exact speed and the way the water is moving. Right now it looks very busy, it's a little too fast, so I'm just gonna grab the last keyframe here, hit G to move it, Y to move it only on the Y axis, and just move it down halfway. Now when I play it again, it just moves a little slower. I feel like it's a little more realistic. Okay, I think I'm done with my little guy here. Let's just hide him. And what else could we get in here? We do see a few mountains in the background, but let's add some more patterns here into the lake. And for that I have another great plugin for you, which I almost use for every single scene, which is called Blender Kit. With Blender Kit you have lots of free models. Some are paid, but a lot of free models. And now I can just, when I go here on this button, free, now when I just type in dirt, I have lots of cool photo scanned items or real models I can use for my 3D scene, and just drag and drop them in there. But what I actually want is like land. So those are cool. It's basically like a coastland rocks. So I'm just gonna add this into my scene, just drag and drop, which is a very cool fast solution if you don't want to model things yourself. And those are 3D scans, so they should look photoreal. So I'm just gonna bring them a little closer to the camera, so I have a little bit of foreground elements. I can bring the other one somewhere in the background and rotate them. I can rotate them with R, Z, and now I just rotate them amongst that axis. So just scatter them around a little so it looks real. That looks already way better. Just have to take a look how high my camera is, because I want it to be like somewhat, not necessarily on eye level, but somewhere around there. So when I hit N and go under my item, I can see that my camera is 1.5 meters above the water right now, which is fine with me. So when I rotate my camera around, I can see I can really look around. So I could basically start my animation from here and go until like here. But first we need to see what are we actually gonna do. and I think a spaceship, something like a spaceship hovering over the water would be pretty cool. So let's see what Blender Kit has for us. Spaceship. I like this one. Let's use this one. Now, very often when you import your models and then you just want to move this or animate this, you just click on it and hit G to move it, but you see I just grabbed one of the parts, but I actually want to move this entire thing. Right click to not move it actually. So very often or almost always those objects come with a null object or with an empty. It's called an empty in Blender. When I move this, I move this entire model. Like the 3D scans, usually they don't have a null object or an empty rather, but models, if they're like modeled properly, those usually have a empty. So when I move the empty like somewhere here, then obviously I move this entire thing around. So now I just have to figure out what kind of animation do I want to do, and I think I'm just gonna have it fly by. So I definitely want to get the reflections in the water of it because it looks very real. So what I'm gonna do is I am gonna hit dot on my numpad. So I'm just gonna skip to my spaceship here, hit 7, and now I'm just gonna zoom out. And now when I hit G and Y, I could animate it like this, but actually when I click on global, local, and GY, now it actually, when it animates or it moves it on its local y-axis, so it's just going to go straight, which is awesome. So I'm just going to have it here on the very end. We don't see it in the camera right now, but it's on the very far back, going to the very first frame, and still my spaceship selected. Animate or make a keyframe, hover over location, hit I. I'm gonna go on the very last frame, and now I move this with G, Y, have it past the camera. Let's move it till the very end of my little water. I don't see where it is right now, but I'll just animate it for now and hover over location, hit I. Now again, it made this funny Bezier curve. I don't want it. Hit A, T, linear. So now when I play this, I can see that it's just passing me. Right now, for my taste, it's way too small. I want it to be like super fast. It's like, what the hell did we just see? So I'm just gonna bring those two keyframes further apart, like the last one just higher, because then it's just going to move faster. See, this is like very fast, maybe too fast. And now I can animate this camera that it's basically following the spaceship. The easiest way, which I don't always recommend is, but I still have to mention it, click on your camera, go on constraints, add constraint, and track to. Now I can track the camera to the spaceship. So now you can see the camera is looking at my spaceship, and it doesn't matter where my spaceship is going, it just keeps following it around. And now looking at it, I can just grab the first keyframe and move it further back because I just wanted to start further away. That might have been too much, but I like the speed though, it looks very cool. Let's just split the middle, split the difference, have it a little closer, because I don't want this video to start too boring. I don't want to just look at the water for too long, so I'm just gonna bring the spaceship a little closer so it starts a little earlier. Nice, I like that. The one thing I don't like is I could add some extra detail here, because right now there's like no stuff left here because I didn't put any objects in this direction, just in one. But the easy fix is just to scatter around more details. Just grab one of those, hold Control D, and just bring it somewhere else in place. I can even make it a little bigger. Definitely turn it, you want it to turn those. I can even grab all of them at once and see where the camera is looking at, and Alt D, Shift Z, and bring some more over here. Bring it into the ground more so we don't see them that much. But that just gives the scene a little bit more extra detail. Let's bring this one a little out, this one also. Now what I don't like is two things. Let's see if we can change the color of our spaceship. I think if it was black it would look better. Also, we can play around with the nodes. Let's say we want to add some more contrast into the roughness. So I'm just going to make a color ramp, plug it into the roughness, and add a little more contrast. What that does is just adds a little more shininess to it, if that's something you want to do. When it comes to color, you just basically want to have a opposite color of the background. If that was white, it would blend in with the background, with the sky, and you don't really want that. So the animation looks a little dull right now. So what I want to do is animate the rotation, not this one, the Y rotation. So I just wanted to wiggle back and forth a little. So I'm just going to hover over rotation, hit I, and now I'm going to delete the other two because it always creates two all of the rotation. So I'm going to delete Z and X, and now I'm going to select Y, and instead of actually animating it, I'm just going to give it a modifier, a noise modifier. Now when I look at it, it just jitters back and forth. I hope you can see that, and that's not exactly what I want, so I'm going to increase the scale so it just jitters slower. So it's just, it looks a little, it's actually moving. I can even make it even slower. There we go. If I wanted to move more, turn more, I could increase the strength, which I probably won't do. Actually, it doesn't look too bad. Let's just split the middle like somewhere here, 1.4. That'll do. Alright. What else can we do to add photorealism? We need some atmosphere. The way we're going to do that, we're going to Shift A and make a cube. Increase the size of the cube by a lot. We want to have everything in the scene inside this cube. With tab, I'm going to select the bottom here and bring the bottom up because I don't need the cube to be that low, just till here. Apply the scale as usual when you change something size. Give it a new material. Let's call this volume. And I'm gonna delete the principled volume, principled BSDF, and give it a principled volume instead. What that does is it gives everything fog. Right now the fog is too strong, so if I decrease the density, it's gonna be just weaker. And for that, let's actually switch to cycles because fog always looks better in cycles. Also, I'm going to turn off fast GI approximation, turn up volume a little. And now with the anisotropy, if I increase this to 0.6, the fog is more visible when it's backlit, and that's how it is in nature usually. And that already looks very, very cool. The fog might be a little strong, but that's okay. I'm just going to decrease the number by half. I'm going to increase the specular IOR level of my rocks a little so they're going to look a little wet, and also the metallic. Now, and another very cool plugin which I really recommend is Camera Shakeify. It's by Hubert. I really recommend it because that basically can make your camera shake as if someone was holding it with their hands, which always gives it a little more photoreal look. So when I now play it, you can see it looks like, okay, someone is actually holding this, which is very cool. And it has different modes. Investigation is always like the go-to, but there's a close-up which just makes it move a little less. The wetting, it's even smoother. Walk to the store is probably very organic. Handycam run, so someone is like running with their phone, and you can also decrease the influence or scale. So I'm just gonna go with investigation because that looks very real, and there you go. That just gives a little more imperfection in the camera movement, which always looks very real. Okay, one more thing I want to add is a particle simulation where water particles spray left and right. So let me try that real quick. For that, I'm just gonna go to my car, or to my spaceship, and the idea is I'm gonna add a particle emitter right underneath the ship on this water surface, and spray water particles, which are not real particle, not real water, not a fluid simulation, just particles spraying left and right from the power of the jets, and that could add a little photorealism. So I'm going to do that real quick. So now this is what my particles look like. They basically just spray water droplets in in two directions, left and right, and a little to the back. If you want to know how to make this in particular, just let me know in the comments. I'm going to make a specific tutorial on that. But now that I have this shape here, I have to track it or parent it to my spaceship. So right when I have it in the right position, like somewhere here, I have this selected, shift select my parent of my spaceship, hold Control P and parent object, and keep transform. Now wherever my spaceship is going, this is also where my particle emitter is going. Now I just have to bake the simulation on a cache and bake. Those are like one of those details which you might not even see because it's like so fast, but you know, the more details we add, the better it is. And now obviously we don't want to see the emitter, so I'll just go down here under viewport display. I don't want to show the emitter. Under render, I don't want to show the emitter either, so when I render it, it's not going to be there. So I just have the water droplets flying away from the water. Here, this moment is going to be like a thumbnail moment, so I definitely want this particular frame to be looking as good as possible. So I'm just going to move this stone here a little more to the side, this back here, move this also a little further away. So I definitely want to see the reflection here because that just adds to the photorealism. And one thing, this is like a secret tip of mine, I never mentioned that in the tutorial, but I have a cinematic composition I always use in my scenes. It's made by Tkocz, and when I add this to my renders, it just looks like as if it was shot in the camera. There's plugins for that too, which I might use in the future, but I'll show you real quick what I do. It works like that because it is in a different Blender file. I have it saved here, so I'm just gonna append the cinematic composition in my node tree. There it is. I appended. Nothing's gonna change yet, but when I go to my compositor, I'm gonna use nodes, and with Shift A I can add a node group right here. Now when I switch to compositor, use compositor always, automatically it just looks more cinematic, but I have to adjust it a little. So I'm going to tap, dive in here. So I have, as you can see, there's lots of different nodes, and I could go in a future video through all of them, what they all do. Like for example, I have like glare here. I can add glare to my scene, which, you know, like lens dirt and stuff like that. It is very cool. Again, I don't want to dive too deep into this because there would be like a whole separate video, but if you're interested, I can make a separate video on that. One more thing you can add is depth of field. If you go under your camera settings, add depth of field under the object, just have your spaceship. Now your spaceship is going to be in the focus, everything in the background is going to be out of focus, everything in the foreground is going to be out of focus. You can adjust the f-stop to have this effect stronger. You don't want to go too hardcore though, because it's just going to look like a miniature. So 1.5 is like the lowest number I would go. For this one I'm going to go with 2, because it is a nice background. Since it is a photo, it's going to look photoreal, so I don't have to hide too much in out of focusness. And we're basically done here. One more thing, I'm going to go under the render settings, make sure to have motion blur activated, because with motion blur it's just going to look better, more real. Like all this movement here, it's going to look way better. And when you're ready to render, just go on output, the frame rate you want to use. This is usually what I use, the frame beginning and end. I'm going to render till frame 200. My output folder, wherever you want to render it to, and make sure to make a new folder for that. I'll just call it 01 in case I have to re-render something. Accept. Now I don't need an alpha channel because there is no alpha in here. RGB is fine. Color depth I'm going to do 16, compression 0, and I also render as a PNG sequence. You can see that here. So in the end you're going to get an image sequence. So it's going to be 200 images, and then you can put them together in a compositing software. And then you can also adjust the colors a little bit and stuff like that. It always helps. But that's it for this video. I hope you got some inspiration out of it to see how easy it actually is to make a 3D scene, a sci-fi scene, or like a VFX scene. So you can do all of that from your computer at home. It is very cool. It is a lot of fun. And I just made this. I was recording this for 53 minutes, so it was fairly fast. And of course, if I spend like 5 more days on it, I could make it even better, add more spaceships or whatever you want, whatever your little heart desires. So you can do anything you want, which is so cool. Like, just think of it, like a few years ago it would have taken millions to make a scene like this, and now you can do this from home for free. Awesome. Anyways, thank you so much for watching. If you have any questions, please let me know in the comments below. And I'm losing my voice, but it's okay, we're done here. Thank you so much, and see you in the next video. Toodaloo.